The secret World War II meeting that still controls your money. Imagine a world where the future of every nation's wealth was decided in a single, isolated meeting, far from the battlefields of World War II. This declassified file reveals how, in the stifling summer of 1944, a small group of powerful figures secretly forged the economic rules that govern our modern world. In rules that continue to dictate the value of your currency, the price of goods, and the very stability of nations. What really happened behind those closed doors, and why is this story still largely untold? You'll understand why major global financial crises erupt, why certain countries hold immense economic power, how the echoes of this wartime agreement shape your daily life in ways you never suspected. Prepare to see the invisible threads connecting a remote New Hampshire hotel to your wallet today. The gathering in the woods, a world on the brink. But why, in the deadliest conflict humanity had ever seen, were the world's most brilliant minds focused not on bombs and bullets, but on banking and global trade? With wasn't some minor side event. It was a desperate gamble for post-war stability. Our declassified file takes us to Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, July 1944. Forget the images of battle-scarred Europe or the Pacific Front. Here, nestled amongst the picturesque White Mountains, stood the opulent Mount Washington Hotel. Aside from any war zone, this isolated setting was chosen for its discretion, a place where 44 allied nations could send their most astute financial minds without drawing public scrutiny. These weren't generals, they were economists, central bankers, and seasoned diplomats, each carrying the weight of their nation's post-war fate on their shoulders. Their collective mission was monumental: prevent another Great Depression, one that had fueled the rise of extremism and ultimately led to this very war. The previous global economic order, rooted in the rigid gold standard, had spectacularly failed. It led to protectionist trade wars, competitive currency devaluations where nations tried to make their exports cheaper at others' expense, and a crippling lack of international cooperation. Nations hoarded gold, trade plummeted, and economic nationalism spiraled out of control. The memory of soup lines and widespread unemployment was fresh in everyone's minds. Everyone at Bretton Woods agreed a new order was desperately needed, one built on cooperation, not destructive competition. They knew that economic stability was the bedrock of lasting peace. What wasn't agreed upon, however, was the who would control this new order and what form it would take. Out of the shadows of wartime secrecy, two titans of economic thought emerged to battle for the world's financial soul. On one side, the brilliant, aristocratic, and fiercely opinionated John Maynard Keynes from Great Britain. On the other, the aware, formidable, yet mysterious and politically shrewd Harry Dexter White from the United States. Their intellectual clash, behind those hotel doors, would determine the fate of global finance for the next half-century, and perhaps beyond. So, how did these two men, with radically different blueprints for global finance, secretly negotiate the very foundations of global wealth while the world burned? That is, and what hidden compromises were struck? Keynes, representing a war-ravaged Great Britain, arrived with a bold, almost revolutionary plan. He envisioned a new international currency, which he dubbed the Bancor. This digital-like currency, not tied to any single nation's gold or reserves, would be managed by a powerful, truly international central bank, the International Clearing Union. This institution would ensure balanced trade by penalizing both nations with excessive surpluses and those with large deficits, promoting global economic equilibrium. Keynes believed this Keynes plan would prevent a return to the destructive trade imbalances of the past, provide credit to struggling nations without forcing them into punitive austerity, and foster genuine global cooperation. It was a vision of collective responsibility, designed to prevent any single nation from dominating. Harry Dexter White, on the other hand, arrived with the full, undeniable backing of the United States. America, untouched by the physical destruction of the war, was rapidly becoming the world's undisputed economic powerhouse, holding 2/3 of the world's gold reserves. The Right plan was more pragmatic, some would say more self-serving. He championed the US dollar, backed by America's immense gold reserves, as the world's primary reserve currency. He pushed for the creation of two institutions: the International Monetary Fund, the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, now known as the World Bank. While seemingly cooperative, White's proposals subtly cemented U.S. economic supremacy. The debates were intense, shrouded in diplomatic secrecy. Accounts from declassified records describe delegates arguing late into the night, fueled by coffee and the immense pressure of their task. Every clause, every comma, was a battleground for future economic power. The delegates grappled with issues that still echo today: how to handle massive trade imbalances, how to aid struggling economies without undermining national sovereignty, and who truly held the reins of global finance. Ultimately, the overwhelming economic might of the United States, coupled with Britain's desperate need for post-war aid and reconstruction funds, shifted the balance decisively. The ambitious Bancor was shelved, and White's vision largely prevailed, establishing the dollar as the world's dominant currency and creating the foundational framework for the IMF and World Bank we know today. The WID, this wasn't just a win for the US. It was the deliberate construction of a new world order. The dollar's dominance and the Nixon shock. So, how exactly did this seemingly benign wartime agreement secretly give the United States an unparalleled economic leverage that would quietly shape global events for decades, until one shocking announcement changed everything? The Bretton Woods Agreement, officially ratified in 1945, established a system known as the Gold Exchange Standard. Under this system, the US dollar was pegged to gold at a fixed rate of $35 per ounce. In turn, all other major currencies were pegged to the US dollar at fixed exchange rates. This arrangement made the dollar effectively as good as gold for international transactions. For instance, if Germany wanted to buy oil from Saudi Arabia, they would often do so in US dollars. Countries around the world needed to hold vast reserves of dollars to conduct international trade, stabilize their own currencies, and meet their financial obligations. This gave the United States an extraordinary, almost invisible advantage. It could print its own currency to finance its debts, conduct foreign policy, and invest abroad, while other nations had to hold those dollars, essentially financing American spending and global influence. This was an economic superpower born not from direct military conquest, but from a strategic, carefully negotiated wartime agreement. However, the very success of the system contained the seeds of its undoing. As the US financed its burgeoning welfare programs and the costly Vietnam War through increased spending and printing more dollars, doubts began to grow about its ability to maintain the $35 per ounce gold peg. Other countries, holding vast sums of dollars, began to worry. What if the US didn't have enough gold to back all those dollars? Nations like France, under Charles de Gaulle, famously began demanding their gold in exchange for their dollar holdings, putting immense pressure on US reserves. The trust in the dollar's gold backing began to erode. This immense pressure culminated dramatically in August 1971. Facing growing inflation at home, a persistent trade deficit, and a dwindling gold supply, President Richard Nixon made a shocking, unilateral announcement. On live television, he declared that the United States would suspend the dollar's convertibility to gold.
The strength of a nation's currency is based on the strength of that nation's economy. And the American economy is by far the strongest in the world. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets,
effectively closing the gold window. This move, known as the Nixon shock, shattered the core of the Bretton Woods fixed exchange rate system. Without the gold peg, the fixed exchange rates crumbled, replaced by the floating exchange rates we operate under today. This wasn't the end of the dollar's dominance, but a dramatic, declassified shift in how its power was wielded. It revealed the underlying fragility of a system built on a single currency's might and marked the beginning of a new, more volatile era in global finance. Echoes in today's geopolitics and economics, the enduring legacy. If the original Bretton Woods system collapsed in the 1970s, why does a declassified file from 1944 still hold the answers to today's geopolitical and economic mysteries? The answer lies in the lasting power of its institutions and the subtle ways they continue to dictate global dynamics. The two major institutions created at Bretton Woods, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, still exist and wield enormous, often controversial, influence today. The IMF acts as a global financial safety net, providing emergency loans to countries facing severe economic crises. However, these loans often come with strict conditions, known as structural adjustments, which can dictate a nation's fiscal policies, privatization efforts, and social spending. The World Bank, on the other hand, focuses on long-term development, funding massive infrastructure projects, healthcare initiatives, and educational programs in developing nations. Their continued existence, often under heavy U.S. and Western influence through voting power and leadership, ensures the original spirit of Bretton Woods, a dollar-centric global order, persists, even if its mechanics have changed. The most profound and often unseen impact is on today's geopolitics and economics. The dollar remains the world's undisputed primary reserve currency. This gives the U.S. immense, often unilateral leverage. Consider the power of financial sanctions. By restricting access to the dollar-denominated global financial system, the U.S. can effectively cripple the economies of adversarial nations. A tool born directly from the dollar's Bretton Woods established supremacy. This explains why recent years have seen a concerted effort by nations like Russia and China to de-dollarize. They are actively creating alternative payment systems, forging new trade blocs, and conducting bilateral trade in their own currencies, directly challenging the very foundations laid at Bretton Woods. This isn't just about trade convenience. It's about shifting global power, reducing reliance on the U.S.-led financial order, and creating a truly multipolar economic world. The Bretton Woods legacy explains why emerging economies are demanding more say in global financial institutions, why discussions about a new global reserve currency periodically resurface, and why the stability of currencies from Tokyo to Tehran can still hinge on decisions made in Washington or on the performance of the U.S. economy. The secret meeting of 1944 isn't just a historical footnote. It's the invisible hand shaping the news headlines of today, dictating the rise and fall of nations, and influencing the very economic security of billions. Understanding this declassified history is crucial to understanding our current world. The unseen threads, a legacy still unfolding. The Bretton Woods Agreement wasn't just a financial deal. It was a blueprint for a post-war world, meticulously designed by powerful figures operating behind closed doors, its true impact often obscured by the more dramatic narratives of war. Its declassified details reveal the surprising origins of the global economic architecture we navigate every single day, from the stability of your national currency to the power dynamics between the world's largest economies. The echoes of that secret meeting continue to shape our world, proving that some of history's most profound impacts are often the least understood, waiting for their files to be truly declassified.